Abstract Transmissions.
And hello, thank you for listening to Abstract Transmissions. Today we have Matt Blanchette, the owner and operator of Revelry Studios, as well as the songwriter and vocalist of Paper Monsters. Thank you for coming on the show today.
My pleasure, man. Good to be here.
I was just scrambling to get things ready, ADHD, so sorry about the delay there.
Sure, I know the feeling.
Fucking lists, you know?
Yeah.
It really makes life livable. So I try to get on the list thing, but sometimes, it's just things aren't moving.
Funny enough, man, like I live and die by lists, like I've got notes on my phone. Like the reason that I will never not use an iPhone is the two reasons is the notes syncing to all of my computers. All my lists are in the same place, and then the texting from my computer is great, but mostly I've got lists, man. I found out at a very early age that I was just like a total scatterbrain. So like I've got this around here, this like kind of notorious system of a tier 1, 2, and 3, and that's like it's on my to-do lists, it's on like my playlists for music, it's on like my bookmarks for websites, like tier 1 stuff you use all the time.
Kind of like a triage system almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So even in my bookmarks on my web browser, I've got a folder called tier 1. That's stuff I probably hit on a daily basis. Tier 2 is like less often. Tier 3 is stuff that you just can't get rid of, but you probably like, how to restore the firmware on this mixer. Once every other year, I need to hit that and
put it in your organizational space in the calendar. That's huge. It's funny. I ran a territory for Samsung home appliances for about 3.5, 4 years, and my biggest challenge was organizational skills. I don't have them. So like having to set up lists and whatnot was incredibly important. Having files for each and every email vendor, things like that, making sure I didn't lose track of it. But
sure,
a tier system is incredibly helpful. That like exponentially more efficient than what I've been doing. So
it helps me because the lists are always changing. You know what I mean? It's like I've got 5 things I want to do, but in the middle of the day, something comes up and all of a sudden other stuff takes priority. It's like, all right, bump that back down to tier 2. And a lot of my team here started doing that because it just works. It's like, and having like I have one of my team members likes to make lists with make notes physically. And I'm like, that's great. That's very old school. But I don't have them on me when I need them. Yeah. And I just change my lists and my notes so frequently and update them that I need to have that just be able to constantly be like, yeah. So,
well, I mean, so do you use that feature in the iCloud? Because like I have everything's Apple for me too. Like right down to recording Logic. For editing a podcast, it's totally overkill and unnecessary, but I still use Logic. I mean, I have it because I've had it for a while.
Hey,
but
whatever.
It's totally overkill.
That's the beauty of Logic, man. It's just kind of like it's the tool that'll do what you want it to do. Like kind of no matter how basic or advanced.
Yes, absolutely. I love Logic. I mean, I absolutely adore its intuitive. I mean, that's everything with Apple, right? Is intuitive functionality, logical functionality.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Like it just everything's where you expect it to be, not necessarily where you learned it on a PC.
Right?
Like it makes more sense to somebody who's never used a computer before than it does somebody trying to convert from PC to Mac or.
Yep. In our trade, especially these days, now that technology's caught up so much, the program we're using is so less important, so like the motto around here is now like, what gets you done the quickest? What gets you from point A to point B the quickest? Which way do you feel better using? So it's like, we use Logic. That's the sole DAW for this studio. I've used Pro Tools and I didn't like it. And I get why it was designed. It's supposed to work with the console, and it is very powerful in many things that it does, and it definitely is better than Logic in certain ways. But overall,
like you said, with a console, you know what I mean? It's made for its engineering, for one use.
It's meant to bridge the gap between analog and bring it to digital versus like Logic. It was built digitally. Everything. I have a lot of analog gear that I love, and I'll always want to use.
I was gonna say, can we touch on that for a second? Analog, sure. I like going back to old school, like David Geffen, stuff like where it's using these giant ribbon tracks, and like it's just insane how it was done before versus now. I've done a little bit of that, you know, cut and paste, like following time time stamps, where I don't know much about the actual correct terms, but like the timestamps and like trying to cut and paste based on that. But that was like with a Zoom HD 16, recorder,
Right.
not with like ribbon, actual tape.
It's
How the
crazy.
hell?
And those are the days, man, when the term engineer really meant that. Like you were an engineer. The guys
Literally.
at like at BBC, the guys just all of those famous old studios doing the Beatles and stuff, like those consoles, they made them, and or they bought them and modified them. Like you needed to know
Right.
electronically how they worked and how it was engineered. And a lot of modern gear today is based on designs that these engineers like figured out. They're like, I like this compressor that I bought, but there's things I don't like about it, so I'm going to pry it open, tear
I'm
some
gonna make it
stuff out,
myself.
but
That's
replace the
awesome.
transistors and do some other hacky shit, and then voila, the modern Neve console is born. The modern SSL is born. Like these people are literally engineers, and it's like I try not to take for granted that the fact that I even am operating in this industry is mostly due to the work of far smarter people than I. It's like
Hey,
the fact that I can even be doing this for the startup costs that you have nowadays, for
right.
the technical skill level that you need to get into it. It's just so much more approachable than it was back in the day when this guy's engineering often were not musicians. They were engineers. They some of them didn't even have musical ears. They had to learn that side of it, versus
Right.
now it's come from the other way now.
And you can see that, like, and like it really has, like, right down to the fact that people aren't reliant on the industry as much as they are. Like, people can make stuff in their home. They can do things without having to have like a door guy, so to speak, like
Yep.
a paywall, so to speak, to get music out there. Now the internet is just living and breathing all the time. It's seething information,
Yep.
that now everything can just kind of move around. But it comes down to, well, what do you want? What's the effort that you want to put into making it yourself, or going to somebody else, or standing on the backs of somebody else who've done the information, like yourself, who's done the time and effort to learn the tricks of the trade, so to speak. But coming from a layman's perspective, it can be daunting. I mean, I have some knowledge about DAWs and stuff, but only to get by for the most part. you
Sure.
know Self-editing, stuff that I learned in GarageBand, or geez, all the way back to MTV Music Editor on the PlayStation, or Fruity Loops, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That really kind of was a weird segue into it, but for me, I really enjoy the process of recording, but not so much the editing and all that stuff. I can do some of it. I know how to
Sure.
sculpt a little bit, but I'm not the guy for that job. So it's amazing to talk to people in your line of work that have that experience, and also a musician, like you were saying. It wasn't common, um, that you'd find engineers that were also musicians that also had that ear for a vision, an artistic vision, production, and the whole
Yeah.
gamut.
I mean, in more traditional days, like the producer is the producer and the engineer is the engineer, and they have very different roles. And a producer is more of a musical background, engineer is more of a engineering background, and then so it's crazy, and
It
you,
really is. I mean, think about how that must have impacted the creativity, just the reins on the creativity, let alone like if somebody from production doesn't think it's going to work for an album. Say, I mean, and again, I'm not super knowledgeable about the process. This is all stuff that I've read, but like a long time ago, like say a long time ago, the 90s, the 80s, when people were working with, labels that have you know, a production guy and somebody who's handling editing and whatnot. Everybody has a different bias or different perspective, and say the guy in production doesn't agree with, say, the artist who's creating it, or the artists themselves are working around whatever the production is saying. That has to impact the I guess the creative, what's the word I'm looking for, framework of
Sure.
the
Yeah.
the material, you know.
And it comes from a lot of directions. It's like for better or for worse sometimes. You know, obviously there are things that happened in the old school way that are cool and great and have their own benefits, you know. And then there are so many pros to the way it is now too. I mean, the barrier for entry is so low now. Like,
Yeah,
you know, for a few $100, anyone can start making music in their bedroom, and it's awesome. So let the creativity flow,
right.
you know. So and the equipment is so much cheaper and so much higher quality than it used to be. um you know, a lot of musicians, you can look at it two ways. There's like a saturation of the music market, letting
Hmm.
anyone make music and do it with you know, lack of a better term, like less talent than you would have normally needed in the past. But truthfully, that's why I'm here. You know, it's like
Yeah,
that's what got me into it. I'm like, I'm not some crazy smart engineer, and I'm not like an amazing musician. I do what I do, and I like what I do. And I think that if it was 30 years ago, I would have probably not been able to enter this entire industry as a whole.
sure.
From an engineer or a musical perspective, I can't read music, I just hear it. And
Right.
um so it's interesting, you know, there's so many more artists than there used to be, but you know, also genres are changing and the industry is changing still to this day. So it's like the whole model of the industry, you know, from record sales to how records are made has been very much changing over the last couple decades.
Well, it's good to have like people with your kind of ear for things that, because like you said, you know, you've got people out there making music. There's more and more saturation of it, but it's in that saturation you're gonna have more things stand out too. So
Yep.
like you'll have a lot of, and not in a negative way, but you'll have a lot of noise, a lot of distortion, right? And you'll have those peaks that kind of stick out, and you're just like, whoa, what is this? You know,
Yeah.
which I think is just a more intensified version of what it was before. It's just that
Yeah.
it's a numbers game. There's more people making more music, and then you're still going to have those certain things that stick out really um, uniquely. I guess very unique in the aspect that they just, there's nothing that really sounds like that comes out of that area or whatever it may be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, definitely writing music alone in a bedroom and demoing your own music like that is there's so much to it, you know, and it really lets the experimentation happen. And it like you said, it lets a lot of kind of more unique sounds break through the noise floor there.
Yeah, you know, I as a musician, I've always, I think there's only been one project. Unrest and Trans is probably the only thing where I didn't like sit down and like actual write music. I wasn't part of the writing process. I was really
Mm.
just writing lyrics to, you know, to music that was already kind of structured. But everything else, I've always, it's been at home with an acoustic by myself, you know. And now that's how I write now primarily. And not to say that there isn't like lyrically, it's not, it wasn't a good, it was definitely a good experience doing it differently, but I really, I prefer writing with an instrument, even though I'm not that great of an instrumentalist. Like I'm not a great guitarist or drummer, but I like doing both. I like doing all of it, but vocals and lyrics are where my passion is. And I just can't imagine not having that environment to kind of create everything. And like some people, you know, it's very much in the practice space or in the studio. For me, it's totally by myself for a lot of ideas. You know?
I feel you, and that's kind of more how I operate. And I do lots of, you know, jamming, and I love writing with other people too. But
For sure.
you know, there's an environment, and I like to like come up with ideas and then bring them places, and have other people put their twists and touches in them, and colorize the, you know. But
Absolutely.
both are
Um,
good.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a good way to kind of start and then kind of move into, you know, the writing process with other people. Like, I'll come up with, you know, a chunk of a song and then say, hey, I can't think of anything past this. And, you know, should we change it? Should we change the structure? Um, should we change the whole thing? Is it too repetitive? You know,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Because I have a tendency to write very verse, chorus, verse always.
Right.
and just go back to the basics. And then the tendency to try to break that up too much to the other end of the spectrum. But you know, the recording process I've always found has been tough for me as a vocalist because I don't always feel, I guess, the most comfortable, singing it. In I think it's the same thing where you hear your own voice on an answering machine or whatever. You have that uncomfortable value, I guess, with your own voice. I've gotten past that now at this point in my life. I'm just used to my voice. Doesn't get to me anymore. But I do like the feeling of being in a live environment, having music around me, having monitors versus headphones,
Yeah.
because it's so much easier for me to get what it really feels like.
Yeah.
I've never really been able to do that. Personally, I've never had the experience where I've been able to do that live, record that way. And it's always been something that, like, layering music I'm okay with because it sounds good, and it's a very precise process. But the vocal part of it, getting in a
Yeah.
booth and putting headphones on and not being anything like what you're used to playing live, the experience.
It's tough, and that's a really, really frequent thing that happens. I mean, I deal with the same exact thing, even like owning a recording studio. It's like, oh, it's my turn in the booth. And it's like, there's a bit of brain training that has to happen to get comfortable in the booth. But there's like I always try to tell people, like, it's about the energy and it's about like the comfortability. And if you don't feel it, you can't hear it. And that's like the whole thing. So it's like,
that's true.
You got to pretend that you're in front of people. A producer back in the day told me that. I've always stuck with me, like, pretend like you're in front of stage. And it's hard because, like, you're not. But
right.
It's a way different environment, and it's different than practice space. It's different than live shows, and
that makes sense. That makes sense.
It's like the most important thing. So like the pressure is on. So I
like
recording.
That's what I was gonna say. The pressure is what having that feeling of like somebody's in front of you. You're gonna do everything you can to make that sound as good as you can and put your everything into it.
Yeah.
But when you're by yourself, it's just you in that box. But getting that in your head, I think that's great. I'm gonna hang on to that because that's I think incredibly helpful.
For me, also other tricks that I found, like I think focusing really more on the actual lyrics has been a bit of a brain hack for me. Instead of thinking about the pitch or what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to like pull off, just think about the lyrics and try to like turn your brain off, because it's muscle memory. It's like something that your body's used to doing. And when you're doing it, you're not normally thinking that hard about it. So all of a sudden you're in this booth and in this dark, very intimate place, and everyone's looking at you, and there's lots of pressure, and all you can think about is nailing it. But when you're live, you're not having the same thoughts. You're not thinking that way. You're trying to get your brain in a place where you turn off your brain and you just use your body. I like to use my hands to really like dictate how I'm singing, like voice act a bit, and kind of like if I'm doing swoops, whatever, I just use my hands a lot. And it's a way to help me turn my brain off and just like focus on the lyrics. And the more words that I'm thinking about, the less pitch I'm thinking about, the less technique I'm thinking about.
That makes a lot of sense. And also the meaning that gets brought with those lyrics too. Whatever you put into those lyrics, you're now bringing it back, bringing the emotion back, which is so much more of a value than the actual hitting the tone. Because when you're in it, you're going to hit those notes, right? Like, you're going to hit the vocal notes that you need to hit because you're passionately in that moment, you're in that, and you've got all of that energy going into it. So I think that's amazing. I've never really thought about it like that, but that's gonna be super helpful because we're going back to re-record our stuff that we did kind of DIY. But it was a good experience for us, but also really frustrating because the tracking isn't the problem for us. It's the afterwork,
editing and mixing. Sure.
And it's not something that we're super super skilled in. We have some get by kind of knowledge, but when it comes to really the meat of it, it could sound a lot better. And that's where we're at right now, is discussing like, what should we do with the material? Should we just take what we have, put together, push it out real quick, just because it's an okay representation? But then again, I really would like to go back and redo the vocals, and I think I could do a better job on them. And that little bit of information, it brings you back. I think that would be incredibly helpful this time around when recording it.
Definitely. And the vocals are tricky, man. And the like you said, the lyrical emphasis and the emotive content of the performance is more important than the actual accuracy of the note or anything like that. And especially today, like a lot of the pitch issues can be corrected, especially if they're minor.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I always tell people I'm going to focus way more on making sure that I felt what you were saying than making sure you were perfectly on pitch. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to connect the audience, and that's what I'm looking for.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I definitely wanted to, at some point I'll touch base with you after this, it's an appropriate time, but I wanted to go kind of over a couple ideas and bounce around a few things, partially because we have material, and I'd like to get your input on what do we do with it, but
Sure.
also because I think that your environment's a really great environment for musicians to have that energy.
Thanks.
I mean, that's a huge thing is how are they going to feel in the moment? And that's all that matters, is capturing that energy that they would also put into their music live artistically as a creator. And the fact that you value that is above all, in my opinion. I mean, the equipment and the feeling I mean, you have a beautiful studio. Those are all huge, important things, but how you feel as a musician when you're doing it, that is super huge. And I mean, we've talked a handful of times, you're a really cool dude, but I think that what you have going is so much more important, and not to, butter you up because you're on the interview. But at the same time, I think that it's really intriguing to me as a musician. But I think also gives other musicians kind of an introspect is, what do I do with my projects? Everybody's scared of going to the place where it's going to end up being too much time and hourly, and then they're ending up in a thing where they don't know where they're at, or they didn't, I always tell people, have yourself a set list of material that you're really tight, and go in with that and just be really passionate about it and find somebody that fits you as musicians, somebody that you connect with when you do that recording.
Well, we worked really hard when we built the space to make sure it was comfortable, and not just like comfortable like a lounge would be, but like just like a place that you wouldn't be super afraid to have a beer or like, get like a watermark on a counter or something.
Sure.
A lot of really nice studios are kind of sterile. And like, I obviously subscribe to like a billion forums, and I look at tons of beautiful studios that like, obviously have gear that would like put mine to shame, and have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. I don't have a fraction of that kind of stuff, but
is it inviting? That's the thing. Like, how do you feel when you're there? And I think that that's so much more important. Like, I went to a friend of mine, Aaron, and Iron Hill Studios. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Aaron. He used to work
I've heard of it.
Aaron Hill, I'm pretty sure his last name is Hill. I may be wrong on his last name, but really awesome guy, and he helped us record in a very short amount of time. We were under the gun. We just wanted to get this material done, so it wasn't the best, but he made it sound amazing considering the actual tracking time that we put into it. It was so minimum. And the thing about it was, this is before he had, his garage is all set up really nice. This was way before that. It was just in his living room, and one of the best experiences I ever had recording, because it was so just, I felt comfortable around him.
Yeah,
that's all that mattered to me. I felt I could be myself, talk around him, be myself around him, and I would pay whatever for that, because you want it to come out the best, and the only way it's going to come out the best is if you feel comfortable. If you feel tense or awkward or anything like that, it's just not going to work.
You got to have fun with it. You got to be comfortable. Being comfortable is partly about having fun, but it's also, I get it. It's a weird balance, because like you got to have fun for it to feel right, to feel like you're comfortable, but also we got to take it seriously, and we got to like really focus on the details. And
absolutely can't like just kind of blast over it. And I see that's it. That balance between that is super important. The integrity of that, that kind of middle grounds. And keeping people on track, like myself.
Hey, especially with vocalists and any instrumentalist as well, but with vocalists in particular, like there's a lot of different approaches to doing vocals, and some artists, prefer to like just sing the whole song a bunch of times, and it will be like, oh, I like this part of that take, and I like, comp that together. Or other artists, especially like as we get into like rock music and heavier music, it's like it's all about, no, I want to focus on the verse. We're going to take the verse and I
Yeah.
want the verse done before we move forward, and then we're going to
Yeah.
do the chorus. And it's like, and that works a lot better, again, especially for heavy music where vocalists are more strained anyway, where it's like, I don't want to do a big chunk, I want to take small bites and make sure they're great. And
So you're touching base on a few things that like, and we'll talk about this after because I don't want to chew up the whole podcast going into stuff about
sure.
my band's recording process. But when we're doing the vocals, I really wanted to do like a run through and then just go part by part because I
Yep.
didn't want to take too much time on it because I knew editing, we weren't going to spend too much time with the pitch correction and all that stuff, which is what really needs to be done. Is that there's only slight things where the vocals, they're two different tracks, doesn't
Mhm.
match up exactly. The pitch is almost there, but it's just slightly off. And if you're doing two tracks, I don't even know what you do in that scenario. So again, somebody who knows what they're doing, would be able to go, oh, this is the best scenario. This is what you do. This part of this is good, but this, you can junk this. Whatever it is, somebody who has that decisive insight, such as yourself, in those environments is really what you need a lot of times, because it's an unbiased set of eyes. Somebody who's not attached to the outcome of it. They're looking at it from a what's not unbiased, but a just I don't know. They're standing from outside of the project entirely,
Sure.
and not committed or not committed, but not attached to the outcome of the scenario. So
Right.
they're going to look at it and give you their genuine, honest opinion about how this is going to sound, what the best scenario is going to be for them.
Yep. Someone without expectations for the project, who can look at it with the least amount of bias and just kind of decide and say, I like what you're saying here, but I think that this other route is the move, because you're just more attached to what your expectation is rather than what is I'm seeing the potential is here.
Right. And that's it. The potential you're going to see versus the person that's in it, because they're so wrapped up in it. Like, oh, I got to do this over and over and over and over and over until I get it right. And you're like, no, you should take a break, come back to it, and you're probably
Yep.
going to nail it the next time. The first time.
Take a break is a great move. Especially, it's like, well, I just don't like how I'm saying this one word. Well, the way you keep trying to say it, the way you think is right, is actually messing up the rest of the phrase, and it actually feels awkward. Stuff like that, where it's you're really focused on details, and I'm just trying to get something that feels good.
I it's good to hear kind of stuff like that, because as a vocalist, like, at least at this point in the band that I'm in, like, I know where everything is and the way it should sound for the most part. I have a couple lyrics that flip back and forth sometimes, but almost everything is where exactly, like, I envision it in my head. So it's like, if we were to go into an actual studio environment, like, the nice thing about being that point where you just, everybody knows where they're at, what they're going to do, they're not really going to change anything down the road, is that you can go in, put on your best, lay down your best tracks, because you've played it a million times, or you're super comfortable with it. You know exactly the words are going to come out the same way. It helps, I think, a tremendous amount. Take the stress off of the person who's laying the tracks too. Just knowing that, like, you've done this a ton of times, and that how it's going to come out is pretty consistent to how you've done it on stage.
Yeah, definitely.
People rush in the studio, I think, sometimes a lot, because they're so excited about playing live and have something to pass out.
Yep. Rehearsal and doing it a bunch of times it makes the experience here often a lot better and a lot easier, and still being open-minded to, like, oh wow, that's kind of cluttered, or we should do it like this way, or I think it'd be better if you add that. Open-minded is still key, but being rehearsed is super important, and you can save tons of time by just being rehearsed.
How often do you run into that? Like, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, go on.
If you were in an environment where they come in, and their songs are pretty set for the most part, they've been playing it live the same way for a while, they do it, but you're like, hey, look, this is how you've been doing it, but what if you did it this way, and this could potentially sound a lot better? How often do you run into that where you're like, I know you've been doing this for a while this way, but have you thought about doing it this way?
It's pretty frequent, and as far as I'm considering, it's a big part of my job. Like, Some clients come in
Cool.
and it's a big project, and we do a lot of foresight, and we do pre-production, and it's like we talk through all the songs, and then we go through all the details, and we like, it's a very collaborative process. And then other people are like, I booked you for 2 days, I'm going to come in and play my songs, you're going to make it sound really good, and that's about it. But even in those cases, which is very common, it's my duty to stop and be like, that feels a little jumbled actually, or it
Yeah.
feels like you're reaching for a note that doesn't feel right.
Right.
Or this verse is kind of long.
Hmm.
It only takes a moment to say things like that, and
That's
we try.
incredibly helpful though for
Yeah.
musicians. Some don't take it that way. Some do take it.
It's
It's you got to be able to take criticism of your work, but also
sure.
insights, because it is another set of eyes and somebody who listens to music other than yourself. And that's why it's good. I think it's good to have that somebody come in and go, hey, this is something, you try it this way.
Most
Don't
people
like it.
appreciate that, and
Yeah.
most people work well with that. And even if it's like, I see you're saying, but I think I like it better the other way, fine, great.
Right.
I'm not here to make all your decisions for you, I'm just here to shed light on things. And
Give you an
sometimes I don't know,
alternative.
I'm not always saying one way is better than the other, I'm just saying I feel a possibility here, I see potential, and maybe you want to explore that for a second. And most people are great about that, and that's kind of why they come here half the time, at least half the time. It's like
That's
there's
great.
plenty of places that make good sounds, though I'm still proud of what we do and the sounds, but like what we offer is more than just the sonic quality of the records. And I think
Hmm.
that sonic quality of a recording has just as much to do with the composition and the performance as it does the mixing. Like, so many great records are based on magical performances, not amazing mixes.
Yeah.
It's more about that, if anything. So it's like, there's plenty of studios that actually get better sounds than I do, and I strive to do that. But at the end of the day, like, I spend extra time on the performances because
Capturing that moment.
I think that's super important. And that moment when it comes out of you and you're like, well, that felt good, you're like, I'm going to use that, because when it felt good, and I can guarantee you
Yep.
99% of the time that's the one that's going to sound the best. It felt good. So
And I mean, it's like it translates to photography in a lot of ways too. If you think about it, like, you have a picture, you take that picture and you catch it in that really good moment. That's just like, whoa, that's an
yeah.
amazing picture. Versus, like, that's a cool picture and the quality is really amazing and all that stuff too. But it's not like the actual the impact of the other picture, the
Right.
moment that was
Right.
caught. And I think that I think is exactly right. I mean, I think that's doing that is an amazing talent. So keep that going, man. That's huge. That's, I think, everything musicians and artists need, really.
That's
Makes
why
us
we do
feel
it.
more
you know
confident.
the same thing, like the photograph's a great example. Like and we do, obviously, like half our business is video, so in that regard it makes
Oh,
a lot of
right.
sense too.
Yeah.
And it's like you might get that moment where everything lines up, and then you look back at it and you're like, it's a tiny bit out of focus, let's do it again. But you never quite get it. It's like, I'm actually going to go with the out of focus one because it just had the magic. And there's like sometimes there's an indescribable inherent like magic thing that happens, and that's like a
That's
lot of
cool.
that creative intuition that we do. So like,
Huh.
visual arts is a whole other thing that we kind of grew into. Doing video isn't really the intention when we built the facility, but it was just like we kind of
That
fell into it.
that's awesome though. I mean, that gives it a whole other layer. I mean, and that's huge nowadays, especially nowadays. Things have changed so much and adapted so much when it comes to internal production, personal production, people doing the things themselves, but also working through studios. And then what's the scenario? Because it's not like it used to be anymore. Everything has
Yeah.
changed so much that
Yeah.
people, musicians specifically, I can totally relate to this. Where do I start? What do I do? Where do I go? Because you want
Yep.
it to be the best representation of you as possible. And sometimes by pushing it out too quickly, you shoot yourself in the foot with that. And I mean, that's, I think, a big part of why we haven't really released much at all, because we know that what we have is worth taking our time and making sure it really comes out the best we can, and that we keep on getting to that point where like we're almost there, but maybe we should do something a little different, or maybe we should take this to somebody else, or
Sure.
and it's, I think knowing when to do that is super important, because a lot of times you can just come out and be like, it sounds like, not that there's nothing wrong with my old 4-track recorder stuff, but my Tascam can't handle everything.
I got you. Yeah. And there's always a balance, I get, especially musicians, like you want everything to be as perfect as can be. And, there's a balance between like just shoving out whatever happens and like being planned and prepared and putting out things. But some people get a little too caught in the weeds with like taking too long to do something, because I'm guilty of myself. I'm always trying to raise the bar for myself and any project I'm involved in.
Right.
And every time there's a concept, it's like, okay, that's great. How can we like elevate that? And that's great intuition. But there is a line that should be drawn sometimes where it's like you're spinning your wheels, and you need to stop overthinking this, and you need to just put it out. Have fun, be fun. People connect with that. People want great music, but they want authenticity. Sure. Authenticity is, in my opinion, it's a word that I use like 20 times a day, especially when I'm recording. Really? I think that music to me boils down to like 3 real things, and they kind of vary by genre, but it's always some blend of, is it good? Is it like fresh? And is it authentic? And so it's like punk rock music, like not always great, definitely not that fresh, but it's like, it's authentic as hell. It's like, I hate this town, I hate my girlfriend. Like and hardcore music is the same way, where it's like really based in the authenticity of the emotion. It's just like, it's just fucking noise, and I love it, like, because it's just like heavy noise, but the dude is ripping his throat out, talking about something. Authenticity is something that is the missing link for me. It's like a lot of people put out music that's really good, and a lot of people put out music that's pretty fresh, but being authentic is that connection point. And it's like, and that first of all,
I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, that is so important.
It puts you through the noise floor. Bands that have been like in pop punk, it was like the Story So Far kind of rose above in my opinion, a kind of a crowded genre, because the vocalist sold that. He sold the authenticity. A lot of times that authenticity comes down to the vocalist, but in all the instruments, are you trying too hard? Or are you just doing it because you like it, and are you having fun with it? There's a balance, and being authentic means sometimes not overthinking it. A lot of heavier genres do a lot of overthinking.
I'm not gonna lie. All of what you just said makes me feel a lot better as a musician, to be honest.
Oh, good.
Because I'm not a very good guitarist. I've been playing since I was 18, and I'm 36 now, and I still like have bad habits like touching my pinky and all kinds of stuff I shouldn't be doing. But the one thing I know for sure is that music is my home. Mm-hmm. It's music. Not to get all sappy with it, it's the one place that I think most musicians can relate to this, that you can always go to, and shit is awful. Shit gets bad. Music is that it's that place that you can just connect to, and authenticity. I think for a lot of people is like, I think about, like you were saying, with punk rock specifically, like people really related to not punk but Nirvana, for example.
Sure.
Very authentic bands, not amazingly talented, when it comes to their material, but very, 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 very passionate.
Talent's not always mandatory, man. Like that's Tom DeLonge is not like known for his guitar work.
Yeah. And I think like Daniel Johnston, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's very much he's passed now, unfortunately, but an amazing musician in my opinion, and certainly not recognized for his skill, but in very much like childlike quality of his writing style. But when it comes to real raw human emotion and pain, man, that is like channeled through 4-track recorder. Just it's to the point where like you really feel what that person's going through. And I think that for me, that's the only reason I even write music. A lot of times it's just like people are like, oh, you write music? Do you write music for fans? And it's like, I hate to sound like a douchebag, but I don't. I write for myself. I only write because I need to get this therapy out of me, this artistic expression, this need to just push something into the void, you
Yeah.
know. And as much as I am always incredibly profoundly impacted when somebody is like, your music, touched me in this way or impacted me, and I have received that in my life, I'm always like obscurely uncomfortable from it because I'm bad at
Sure.
taking any type of positive
Yeah. Modesty.
yeah, but to the point where I'm just like, I get socially uncomfortable, which is not something I usually do. I was in sales for 10 years, but when it's your own music, you get so, you shut down, I think.
Oh, I
Sometimes.
can relate to that, man. Like I think of myself as a pretty outgoing guy, and I like, especially in this trade of like have to be comfortable, kind of being weirdly intimate with basically perfect strangers.
Yeah.
But then I can go home
Right?
and be like super scared to show my girlfriend a new demo I'm working on. I was like, I really hope she likes it. I'm just like,
Wow, I can relate to that so much. My wife, I it's funny. She wasn't a big fan of some of the music. I was like Unrest in Transit. She couldn't stand. She didn't like metal, at
Sure.
all.
Yeah.
And she was never a big fan. What I'm doing now, she would have loved. She was very much into like '90s music, and now like I'm playing guitar again and doing the stuff that didn't really get me incredibly far before, but something I'm very passionate about. She was always my biggest critic in a lot of ways because I measured my musical worth by what I thought she felt about my music, which
Yeah.
she was a tough cookie when it came to that stuff, and because she wasn't into a lot of the stuff that I was, but she was also into a lot of stuff that I was into, like Marcy Playground and just Harvey Danger, just stuff that really um, doesn't always showed up on people's radar, but certainly good music. We would connect a lot when it came to that certain type of material that would be verse, chorus, verse stuff. But I always felt, like you said, like that nervousness. Like I could play in front of a room full of people. I could bomb in front of a room full of people and not care. But playing in front of her was nerve wracking. I mean, eh, you know,
I totally get
it's
you.
it's tough in hindsight now. Um, not showing her some more of the material, but it is what it is. It's energy that I have now to push me keep on making it.
Understand, man. I actually don't know a lot about that, man. What happened, if you don't mind?
Oh, dude. I mean, it dropped. Yeah, we haven't talked in a while, so it's like, and every time like we get together, we talk kind of briefly about like
Yeah,
trying to get a show together or
I know. Like
music recording.
the Facebook gods give me a limited view of your life.
Yeah. No, my wife passed away in 2019.
Sorry,
And
man. Last year. Well,
no, it's okay. I totally hate doing this on air because
I
I
get it.
feel I don't want people to have to hear this every time, because it's and not that they don't. They're very sympathetic. People are always super understanding, but as a musician, I was always very like I wanted her to really like the material that I made, and I know that like when I'm writing now, she would have adored it, but it's tough because it's like I don't have the ability to show her a lot of this stuff now, and so that's a certain thing there. Hey, your gain changed a little bit on your microphone there. I don't know if
Higher or lower?
it's very it's higher. It seems really distorted.
Maybe I'm just too close.
Yeah, maybe it might have been. Yeah, it seems like it's a little bit better now. I totally distracted. Like, sorry,
Yeah, I mean,
ADHD.
I get it too, and I get that these are things that are hard to talk about. You know,
Yeah.
grief is. I'm familiar with grief, lost some loved ones, and it always comes up, and you always like have to talk about it in weird
Yeah.
situations, and you're
It's
like,
super tough.
oh yeah, well, what happened? You're like, crap, you know. But all right, here we go. Like something
Yeah.
you don't want to avoid talking about. You know,
Right,
is like,
and I'm usually pretty comfortable talking about it on the air and whatnot. I try to always leave the episodes unedited unless, somebody is like, hey, I don't want to talk about this specific thing. But like I was talking to Rich actually on the show, and it kind of went in that direction. I always feel guilty, for some reason, and I know I
I
shouldn't, but
understand.
it's like that always kind of like, the attention, on me when I really want to focus it on the guest. But the one thing has been the ability to talk about it more in front of people, around people, is super important, and I'm trying to show that to my son, and I don't want to be a hypocrite. So for
Yeah.
me, every chance I have to talk about it, people are usually, are you sure you feel comfortable? I'm like, for me now, it's just like I don't want to make other people uncomfortable. I'm okay talking about it because it's like, counseling wise, I go to
Yeah.
counseling and all that stuff. It's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get it going, get it normal, and do your best not to alienate people in the process. But
It's funny how in my experience with it, it's like the part about grief is that's weird about talking about it is not me, it's other people.
yeah,
It's like I'm happy to talk about it. Like these are people that I loved. You know, I lost my brother, and that was really hard. And then whenever it's like, oh, I love when my brother comes up because I get to talk about him. I like get to think about him. But then you get this like head tilt, like this kind of like, how you doing, man? Like, oh, I'm sorry
that
to hear that. And it's like that head tilt that I
it's
hate a
just
lot.
like, yeah,
It's
yeah.
like a reminder. It's like, how you doing? Oh, I'm actually okay. But that whole head tilt was just
Like,
like
are
a
you
reminder.
sure?
It's like,
All
are
right.
you sure? I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be sad right now. Damn, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree because it's always that like, and they're worried because they want to make sure that you're talking about it, but like here's the thing with people, and this is the tough thing when it comes to like grief. I feel like is people are always uncomfortable talking about it, but they always go out of their way to talk about it when it's somebody else's scenario because they want to be supportive. But the big scenario, I think the big change in that dynamic is when somebody brings it up, they talk about it, and they go, well, I'm here for you if you need anything, and then they I hate to say nobody's ever there for anybody when they need anything. You know what I mean? It's just a
Yeah.
fact of anything. Is like, and I'm not saying that I've had a lot of people super super supportive and been unbelievably there for me in some really tough times. But I do know that like I have friends in a similar scenario that are just like I can't get anybody to help. I don't have anybody to reach out, and I think there's a lot of times people feel alienated and just completely cut off. And a lot of times that exacerbates scenarios if
Oh
they're,
yeah.
using substances or whatever it may be. To,
Oh, when I need someone, when I need help, is
yeah,
the time I'm least likely to ever reach out and ask for it.
it's true. The same. I mean, I think that's true with a lot of people, but right now it's so dangerous because of the pandemic, so
Yeah.
dangerous because people are dying, and then you have the family that are dealing with the fallout of that death, and then
Yeah.
they're not reaching out, and then it's just, this is real bad, scenario. And luckily, I mean, I've always considered myself to be somewhat, um, you know, out in front of my mental health and stuff, only because I try to, you can't tell somebody to do something and then not do it yourself, right? So
Yeah.
if you really tell somebody you should get, you should talk to somebody, you're going through this, and then you're like, I should really do that myself. So and this was before, geez, this was before, yeah, I'd say this is actually before I had my ankle surgery back 2013, 2014. And it was off and on for a while, but then, you know, stuff happens and you're already going to counseling, you're already comfortable with that person, so like don't wait until it's too late to go to counseling. Go when you're not needing somebody to talk to. That way, by the time you do, you're already comfortable. You've already worked out the fact that it took 3 or 4 therapists in a system that sucks and has no real care as to whether you get help or not. They're actually just making it worse.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
that's the thing that unfortunately the person has to be responsible for getting out in front of something that shouldn't be that broken to begin with, you know?
Yeah. Getting help on your good days, man. That's the problem. That's my
Yeah,
problem, at least. Like,
that's fucking hard.
it's like, oh,
People,
I was bad yesterday, but I feel good today. Like, I'm fine. I don't need to do that. I don't need
right.
to put myself through that.
But those are the
Yeah.
days to do it. Yeah. I mean, little things like I'm trying to utilize like now, like ADHD is really a motherfucker, and people have no idea how bad that neuroatypical condition, I think that's correct, neuroatypical condition, can be for people. I've had it since I was 6. I've struggled with it since I was 6, off and on psychostimulants since I was 6. And the thing is like organizing lists, that whole thing that does come normal to other people sometimes, just doesn't. And then because of it, you're so all over the place trying to get everything into place that eventually you just throw in the towel, and you
Yeah.
don't really get anything done. You get depressed because of it. You fall into these bad scenarios where you're beating yourself up with stuff that you should have done because everything's so disorganized. And
Mm-hmm.
you
And
know,
stack up, man. I can totally relate, man. I started taking Ritalin in 4th grade.
yep,
I moved on, tried multiple other drugs. By the time I was almost done high school, I was on some crazy dosage and just a zombie, like
yep,
absolute zombie.
same.
My
Oh my
friends
god,
were like,
same.
what is wrong with you? Why are you just this flat faced, completely
You're like,
like
oh,
flat
the
acting?
'90s. That's what's wrong. It's just the '90s.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Giving
high
kids fucking
school.
psychostimulants at the age of 6, like same thing. Like they just
Yeah. But
see how it works.
I've subscribed to systems, and that's the thing that it's my crutch. I have to do it, and it's like to a fault.
Has to. Yeah.
If I put my keys and my wallet in the same place every day, and if I don't, they're gone forever.
They're gone
I
forever.
can't find them. I
Oh
can't
my
fucking find
god.
them, dude. I have
Oh
to,
my
and
god.
it's like and
So
people don't
big of a deal.
understand. I was like, oh, this table's cluttered, but I'm trying to put, like, now my mask is part of that thing. My keys, my wallet, my phone,
Absolutely.
and my mask. And I was like, my mask doesn't fit on this table. And my girlfriend's like, why don't you put it somewhere else? I'm like, it has to be with my keys.
It
It
has to be
has to
on
be
the.
with my wallet, or else I'll forget it every day. I'll forget it. You need to
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely. Holy crap. I see, and that's the thing that's tough. Like Kayla was that source for me. She was on top of like my tile. Like she bought me tiles for my birthday, and they were the best
Yeah,
thing ever because she's like, you lose everything. She knew where everything I lost was all the time, and she'd
sure.
set up
Yeah.
systems for me because I was terrible at taking care of myself like a big fucking baby. Still am. But those things that she had in place, I still use. Like I still have to use tiles and automatic ordering things through Amazon. I have to use lists that she wrote 4 years ago to get myself around Market Basket. Like it's sad because like those things, um, those little springboards have been my springboards into other lists, creating my own lists, doing
Yeah.
things for myself. But also managing sales environments was, helpful to that some. When I worked at Barron's, I was doing a really good job managing, organizational stuff there, which I hadn't done before very well. Samsung, it kind of worked abstractly because I just knew my stores. 20% of my stores do 80% of my business, and those stores give them all my attention. That's
Yeah.
it. Just
Yeah.
way more than other people should be giving those stores. Give them double that, and then the other stores that nobody gives attention, give them attention. And no matter what, your job's going to increase. And sure enough, my market grew 125% the first year.
Yeah.
That's also, they didn't have anybody in that area before me. They had like
Right.
a Boston territory, and then they split it to south and north.
Mm-hmm.
So I was north, and people in the middle of nowhere were starting to see me show up with donuts and coffee. I became everybody's favorite rep real quick because they see me frequently, and it's like that coffee donuts guy. Hey. So I mean that's the thing with sales. Like it's just building relationships, and you can do it pretty abstractly. But organization was not my skill. Getting things
Right.
on time was not my skill. PowerPoint presentations and trainings and stuff, I could get in front of people and all that, but being on time for it, I have to be there hours ahead of time to make sure I was actually there on time.
Yeah, I understand. It's one of those things, man. You empty the dishwasher. First thing you do is you make a dirty dish and you put it in the sink.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, whatever, it's just one dish in the sink.
Yeah.
But like, 24 hours later, it's like 14 dishes in the sink. You're like, why didn't I just put them in the fucking dishwasher?
What? Yes, seriously.
It stacks up.
Systems,
and it's just like, that's just how it works. I get overwhelmed on a regular basis, and it's just, that's why I have to like do what I can to try to stick with it. It's like, what are you doing? I'm writing this down. Well, can you do that later? No.
It has to be done now because it won't get done. I'll forget about it. It has to be done right now.
Now or never. And I've learned to accept that. I'm thinking like, I should do this. Am I going to do it now? No. Okay. Then you need to accept that it's not going to happen.
Right. That's it.
If you're okay with accepting that, then it's fine. But if you're not, then you need to get up and do it right now.
Yep. Right. That's it. That's exactly right. Because if you don't have it pre-planned out, you have it organized, you have it in a place where you're expecting it, and you have everything else running on lists, everything else is going to fall behind. You have to do it right then. Be like, okay, if I don't write this down now, it's just not going to, it'll be gone into the abyss. I'll forget that even exists. That transactional situation is gone now. Fucking hail to entropy. Fucking bye-bye.
It helped me out. I spent about 8 years working in IT, and I was doing well. I liked the career, before I started a studio. My mom, when I was in high school, forced me to take a typing class, and I was like, that's so dumb. And then she's like, trust me, I don't know how to do it. You're going to need to know how to do it. So I did it, and I hated it. But like, by the time I'm out of college and I'm like working in IT,
boy, I bet that paid off.
Man, did it pay off. My boss would come over, start talking to me. He's like, all right, this client hit us up. They're having this problem. They need this. I'm typing. I'm not even looking at my screen. I'm just looking at him like, okay. He's like, wow, are you typing that as I say it? I'm like, yeah, if you don't, I'm going to forget what you're telling me. I need to know all this. I need to
That's amazing.
And the ability to type without looking at the keyboard was like so crucial to like, okay, now it's in a note. Now that's it. It's in that note forever. I'll never, I won't remember, but I can have the information.
Whoa, hey, check this out. Your gain thing just fixed itself.
Oh, really?
Whatever was going on, the gain was up there, and I'm just like, well, it'll probably fix itself because you didn't do anything. But then all of a sudden, it's just like, whoa, and it dropped. And now, hey, whatever it was, it's.
I suspect something.
It was weird.
My channel strip here.
Hey, he's got the eye of an engineer.
It happened to me like a couple other times. I was like, I'm running through a couple compressors, and there's a funky spot on my patch bay that I've been kind of like not able to figure out for a little while, and every now and then it just like clicks in. You're like, whoa, why does it sound like this all of a sudden?
Yep. That was kind of how it sounded there for a second.
Like kind of muffly and gained out and weird.
Wait, you had the eye of the engineer. I saw that. You looked down and you looked back at me and you like looked down.
I was like, you bastard
or something. Yeah,
you bastard.
That's the look. I love it. I think that. Oh, excuse me. Shoot, what were we talking about? Oh no.
Organization.
ADHD.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
And the other thing that exacerbates that for me, it's like I love weed. I smoke too much weed, especially since opening a recording studio. Yeah. And it does not help at all in that regard, but it just makes me lean on things. Yeah, exactly. Organizational, scatterbrain.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it helps me in other ways, but it helps me focus. But there's like sometimes focusing on something is a more complicated, it's like, so I'm doing one thing. Okay, I'm thirsty. I need to go get a drink. I'll walk to the kitchen. Now I'm doing shit in the kitchen. I'm like, what was I doing? Oh, I was getting a drink. I was doing a whole other thing in this other room. I wasn't supposed to stay here.
Oh, man, yeah.
So it's like,
I've been there before. It's been a while since I've been there, but yeah.
I like to smoke and I like to get hyper wrapped up in one thing, but if there are other things along the way that can distract me maybe more easily or not, or the other way where it's like my phone's ringing or like I am thirsty, but I'm not getting a drink because I'm just wrapped up.
I have this weird tough balance where I'm trying to I'm relying on cannabis for as like pain management, but also it helps with the ADHD a little bit, but also like you're saying, it can get kind of scattered if you get scattered as to what you're doing. But this is more like me just like losing places to where I am. So because I'm trying to avoid taking the heavier pain medication entirely because of the ankle issues. So
Mm-hmm.
cannabis is a great, obviously, alternative to, taking tramadol. But I have to kind of set it up so I'm kind of breaking it up throughout the day. So I'll do a little bit of work, clean up this thing, then I'll smoke, and then I'll do some editing of an episode, and I'll smoke at the end of a kind of like a task, break it up. So it's almost like a reward system. One, so I'm having a reward system at the end of each task, and two, so I'm actually getting through that task.
Yep. That's a good way to do it.
And following through on it, and making sure I don't get too distracted, because I do easily get distracted. But now with the amount of CBD and THC in my system, just it's a lot. I do kind of consume quite a bit. Between eating it is the biggest thing there. I use a lot of the distillate,
Sure,
chocolates and stuff, and it works well. Because I'm trying not to eat it. Smoke. My doctor doesn't want me to smoke it, understandably.
Yeah, I mean, as a singer, I definitely found drawbacks to like long-term frequent smoking. I mean, it's not just cigarettes, right? Like, I mean, I just developed a cough for a while.
Cigarettes are no bueno for me. I can't. It fucks with my voice. But pot, I don't have any issues with that. It's weird.
That's great. Yeah, I actually got a dry vape because of that. Because I was just like, well, I am a regular smoker, smoke all the time, and
yeah.
After a while, I developed a cough, and it just wouldn't go away for like a year. Just like this weird cough, and I could tell I wasn't singing the way that I wished I was. And I took a little break, and I was like, oh, this feels better. So it's definitely the smoking. So I switched to a dry vape for that, which is helpful. But
I'm trying to change over to this. I mean, I'm still smoking some because, the vape doesn't quite do it. But I've been finding a combination between shatter and a little bit of CBD isolate seems to get pretty close to the effect that I get from flower without actually having to burn flowers. So
right, I used to, when I played back in shows, when I played shows, RIP, I used to eat chocolates and do that kind of thing because I wanted to get high, and I knew if I smoked, I wouldn't perform as well because of literally my throat. So, but everyone to each their own in that regard. Like I've got clients who are ripping butts and chugging whiskey and screaming, and like it doesn't matter to them. But I have a prissy little voice and if I like smoke flower, or if I smoke this or talk too much, it's like, damn it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think everybody does damage to their voice when they do any of those things. It's whether they want to admit it or whether it's adding to whatever they're doing with their voice.
Yep.
So like I noticed that like screaming and whatnot definitely did damage to my voice. How I sang before I was in unrest and transit to how I sing now, completely different. As far as like I blew out certain parts of my voice that I don't think I can even use now, which is not good. But I don't know. I mean, there's also parts of my voice that I'm way better with now because I'm not even close to as nervous as I used to be. But also, I don't know, like I've just loosened up things or gotten, vocal exercise or whatever it was, being really, really aggressive vocally in that band. But also the projecting, I think, was the big thing, is I was focusing only on my vocals and not playing guitar and singing, which was a first for me.
Yeah. I feel you.
But I, after that, like my vocals, they're weird now, especially with the talking. Like you talk for a while, but you start to get the talking voice.
Yeah, I know it, man.
It's like Miley Cyrus on the episode of Joe Rogan recently. That was funny. I was listening to her talking. She's talking about how butts and everything is like destroying her voice. I'm like, yeah, I guess so, huh? Sounds
you're
pretty
right.
fucking rough. You sound like you're an 83-year-old woman. Good goddamn.
We know, Miley. We can tell.
Yeah, your voice has been yikes. Yeah, you sound like it's lived a rough last 10 years. Oof.
Funny to hear that come straight out of the mouth of a famous singer. It's just like, well, dude, stop. You know this. Fucking stop, dude. Like, this is your career.
Right. No, absolutely. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people that that's exactly right. Like but Tina Turner had her legs insured for some crazy amount of money way back in the day because she was relying on them. They made her money if she didn't
Yeah.
have them, you know, dancing and all that stuff. Like it was some crazy argument that they made, but they literally insured parts of her body that if anything happened, they got broken, or she get money because it generates money for her as an entertainer.
Yeah.
It could
I
be
mean,
argued.
sure, it makes sense. And whatever, I can't say shit against Miley anyway. It's just like, you know how many famous rock stars are like, heroin is ruining my life, but I'm not going to stop.
You're
It's
right.
like,
You know,
okay, fine.
that's. I actually was talking about this earlier, not this exact thing earlier, but we were talking about Nirvana briefly, and then we were talking about heroin and rock and roll. Again, not
Yep.
talking about Kurt Cobain. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'm not though, because I used to really look up to Kurt in a lot of ways, and now as a father, I look up. As a father, I go, well, fucking why? Like
Yeah.
fuck him, man. In a lot of ways, like I can't believe I'm saying this. I really have heard everything I think that band's ever put out, and more. And I really love Nirvana in a lot of ways growing up. And then I got to the point where I got burned out, couldn't listen to it. But then it's like I had a kid, and God, it's like, how could you just fucking opt out? This is assuming he did kill himself. Like I know that argument,
Right,
but
right.
I'm assuming I think he killed himself. You know,
Is it
and
really that surprising to you know, knowing him and knowing his past is like
right, right.
I mean,
People,
sure, there's sketchy things and there's weird circumstances there, and I'm not here to like debate that,
right.
but like
Same.
anyone who's like Kurt, he would never. I'm like,
Never.
no, he kind of fucking might. Like
he almost did several times before this. He almost drug overdosed multiple times, a whole bunch of scenarios, you know.
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
definitely likely that he killed himself. Anyway, it's just like how fucking selfish, how
Yeah.
fucking completely narrow-minded, and then people are just so completely idolize this guy, and I did in a lot of ways too, you know. As a musician, still I really respect him because of the music he's made, artistically, the art, because it's art, it's just raw art. It's just
Right.
a vision that he just on the paper, on the you know, in the music. Like I respect that because that's how I feel when I make music and art. It's all just bleh, you know. It doesn't really, it comes from somewhere and I don't really know, but I can relate to that and I have a lot of respect for that. But as an actual parent and then a creator too, like just kind of exited out and left your kid with all that.
Right.
You were
Absolutely.
fucking one of the biggest rock stars of all time. Then you kill yourself and you're like, here you go, your responsibility now, kiddo.
Yeah, not my problem.
Not my problem. The fuck, man? That's even more selfish. Like I get the not being able to manage life thing, and it's sad when people kill themselves, and it's like a bomb that goes off, a suicide bomb that goes off inside a small business. And I heard this described on an episode of Blacklist by Ultron himself. Fucking what's his name there? James Spader. He's saying,
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah.
you know, a suicide is like, it's like that the suicide bomb inside of an actual like building. The people closest are the ones hurt the worst, and as you go out, the radius just gets, you know.
Yeah.
It's just, I understand that about suicide, but like this is so much of a different level.
Yeah.
He's literally leaving her with like all of the pop responsibility, the fact that like paparazzi were like antagonizing Kurt and Courtney to the point where they were, you know, their life was overwhelmed by it, you know. And then he just exits, you know, stage right, fucking, here you go, kid. And you got your mom she'll help you figure it out.
Yeah.
Courtney's got that stuff. Right, Courtney, you got this?
Yeah.
Fucking A, man.
Yeah, it's like the rock star thing. It's
bad.
like there's only so much sympathy you can have. You know who's a giant earth-shattering rock star who has kids and I think seems to be a great father and a great creator? Is Dave Grohl, man. Like,
yeah, he's awesome.
In Nirvana, saw really this awesome. Happen. Could have gone down the same exact path. Now he's his own legendary, like, superstar. He's a director, he's a producer, he's a multi-instrumentalist, he's and he's allegedly a great father and a good dude, you know. It's like That
I mean,
guy.
you can see it in his just. I mean, certain things like as a parent, like you can see somebody they're just their raw joy and just his life probably revolves around his kids, and the reason why he keeps going with music because it's the best way to take care of his kids.
Yeah.
You know, and he loves music too. So,
Now, I
you
love
know,
this quote from him where he was like talking about, I forget the exacts, but he was like, we were in the studio all day and my daughter was running around. She's like, Daddy, I want a smoothie. I was like, okay, we'll go get a smoothie. Just a few more takes. We're going to finish the section. And then, and it's like, or I'm like on tour and like, there's like, oh, David Letterman wants to meet you and you need to go do this. And he's like, and it's amazing because she just doesn't give a shit. She's like, she's my kid. And she's like, Daddy, I want a smoothie. And he's like, I'll go get you a smoothie.
I'm gonna get you a smoothie. That's right.
There's nothing that really brings you back to earth, than like someone who like has absolutely no care in the world that you're this massively famous person with all these crazy celebrity obligations. She's like, no, I want to spend time with you and I want to get a fucking smoothie. So all right,
That's the best thing.
Let's go get a smoothie. Like
that's so awesome.
He's like, you can't run from it. There's like joy.
I can't. Just hearing that, it's so it's the best thing about being a parent. Is just that connection to your kid when they're just like you're the coolest thing in the world regardless of what you do.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're cool because you're gonna give me a smoothie, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're cool because you're I love you, you're my dad, and you're gonna give me a smoothie. Like has nothing to do with all the other stuff. It's like like my son, I love it because Gavin will go. The kids at school. My dad's in a famous band, and I'm like, I'm not a famous band, Gavin. I'm like, he's like, well, Dad's in this famous band called Ambient Discord. You might not have heard of them, but they're amazing. I'm like, Gavin, I really appreciate that, but we're not popular.
Right.
You know, we don't even have released music. You know, he's like, well, to me, you guys are the best ever, and I'm like, because I know what that translates to, and that just makes me feel like the best person in the world. Like fuck music, fuck everything, you know. Like as much as I love music, like that just because he's happy because I'm his dad. Like that's the meaning of existence right there, you know. For not for everybody. Like a lot of people are just like, I can't do kids. Like that's happening in crazy amount right now too,
more and
right?
more, yeah,
understandably, right? I feel bad that I have a kid. As much as I love Gavin more than anything in the world, I would not selfishly I wouldn't take him away from myself. Like I love my son so much. I can't imagine losing him, but I want him to have a happy, great life. I would never ever want a world without him, but good God, this world sucks right now.
Yeah.
Right? And having kids, more kids right now, it's just like for people, I can see why people are like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's like not the world and my own struggles inside of the world.
Yeah. Like people are a lot of times I feel like a lot of times people are just like, things are awful in my relationship, you know, we should just have a kid. That shit happens.
Yeah.
A lot.
Save the marriage, save the relationship.
And they do that, they get married too to save a relationship, which is weird if you think about it.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's
you're gonna get married to save your relationship. That's a little bit of a gymnastic mentally to find you to think around corners there a little bit.
I gotta break a few rules in my brain to make that work. That math.
Seriously.
Show your work.
Show your work. That's right. I would like to see your cognitive dissonance written down.
Please.
Thank you.
I want to know what formula came to this conclusion.
Carry the 0 on that one, you little mathematician. Yeah, I definitely think that you know, as time goes by, people are gonna find with like kids, specifically, kind of going back to the kids thing, like kids are going to look at this generation as kind of like, Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like during this time right now specifically,
Yeah.
those kids are gonna grow up later and be like, dude, what the fuck happened right then? Like, right? Think about like 2020 specifically. It's just like, whoa, oh,
Yeah.
whoa, what a fucking trash fire of a year. Everything, right down to the presidential fucking
And
debate, the whole fucking thing. It's just banana shit crazy.
yeah, it's gonna be how we look at like World War II. You know, it's like, whoa, what? Holy shit, guys!
That's our World War II, though. Think about
Right?
fucking
Yeah,
crazy, insane fucking Tiger King pandemic, just crazy, just crazy. That's our legacy. Our this time,
I mean,
our
I
fucking impact to
it's
history.
you can go down the rabbit hole here and just think about dudes and families in the 20s in the OG pandemic of the last millennia.
Yeah,
And just
100
think
years
about how
ago.
like, oh, stay inside, don't go outside, don't see people, and they're like, guess I'll stay inside and stare at the wall,
Yeah,
like
everybody's
listen to
complaining.
the
Like,
same three records that we own on our record player. Like FM radio isn't even like, we probably
oh
don't even have a
fucking
radio.
god, alcohol and like there had to be like a lot of. I mean, how did they handle it? Did a lot of people die? A lot of people get beaten? Like, there's major issues with friggin' domestic abuse right now because of the pandemic. Like, what happened
Oh
back then when women didn't have rights to do anything? They made questionably even breathe.
yeah,
Like men controlled everything back. What happened back then? You
it's
know what I mean? Like,
crazy to think.
oh,
And they were so like, by
oh
today's standards, like everybody was so ungodly poor. You know, like just the
yeah,
amount of worldly possessions that you'd have, even as like
yeah,
if you're doing pretty well, compared to like the poorest people now. Like, you know, I had to shut down, man. I lived on unemployment for the summer, and I was like, I'm now classified as the poorest segment, and I'm still okay. Like, I could still put groceries in my fridge. You know what I mean? Like, I still got a phone, and I'm still doing it. Versus like, you watch like Cinderella Man, and
well,
you watch
that's
movies in that era
yeah,
where they're like, I'm
absolutely.
poor, they're shutting the electricity off, we don't have a gallon of milk, man. Like,
Real bad scenarios,
yeah,
and that's the thing now, that like people don't look at it as time moves on, and this is where the whole like argument and people are like about socialism, like, and I agree, government control of anything is never a good scenario. Trying to distribute everything even never really works out, but the difference is technology changes everything.
yeah,
Technology is changing, and the reason why things aren't like they were back then during that last pandemic for people arguably just as poor but not materially poor. The
right.
world is less materially poor than it was before. Like, we all have things, even at the people are living in tents, homeless, but they still have a cell phone.
Yeah,
Some of them
yeah,
have a solar charger. Like, it's not good. I'm not saying that their lives are good in any way. I'm not,
right, right.
I don't want to ever, what they're going through is horrifically awful and I can't even imagine. But it is better than it was 100 years ago in that scenario where they probably would have died. So I think that as time goes on, people who are poor now are materially more better off than they were historically. That's going to be the same in the
Yeah.
future. Saying basically, if you go far enough, I think Star Trek's kind of got it right. Like, it's not going to be, hopefully, it's not like this weird socialist thing because everybody's wearing the same fucking uncomfortable clothing. That's kind of embarrassing. But I am all about the fact that, everybody can just print whatever for food. You want steak printed, it'll taste exactly the same. No animals died in the process of this steak. Like the
That's
whole
an
the whole thing. Like, technology, nobody needs to fight in war over things anymore, and there's no material value of anything because everything is in abundance now.
right.
Because everything can be mined and made and
Technology
created.
has changed the availability of food. It has changed the availability of entertainment. The bar for stimulus has changed greatly, even at a zero cost entry. Like, I can't believe that I can go on my phone, go on Facebook, and get a couch and get a computer for probably like pennies on the dollar, you know?
On Facebook, imagine back in the day on MySpace, you'd be like, yeah, I got my couch on Facebook. To be like, what the fuck is Facebook?
What's a Facebook? Yeah, imagine I got my couch off this
Isn't it
MySpace
that
bulletin
college
board.
thing? They're like,
Yeah.
you have to have college, right, for that?
So we've seen obviously some immense rapid change. And this is kind of the law of computing anyway. Like once computers were introduced, everything has changed decade by decade, exponentially more than the previous decade. So the technology is, you know, the Romans,
up,
thousands of years were spent in the Roman Empire, you know, like, and things like they did great things for civilization, aqueducts and plumbing and all these things, but like
happened over long periods of time, and it just got closer.
Even before the Romans, you think about like the Dark Ages and like castle living. It's like these were thousands of years where nothing changed. Nothing changed. And then we go from that, like even 100 years ago in the 20s, plumbing was not like, it was not the norm to have plumbing in New York City. Like even in 1901, you know, it's like,
can you imagine?
You throw your poop on the street out the window in a bucket. Like that's what you did. That's what you did.
Just dumped it out the fucking window?
For you know, yeah.
How am I historically this ignorant? How the fuck did I not know people were just dumping shit out their window?
It's like, yeah, the poor, especially the poor neighborhoods, just like poop just raining down the street.
That's fucking amazing, dude.
That's what you do. It's the craziest thing. And
you're like leaning out. You're like, "Hey, Deborah." Big slop.
Where do you bathe,
Frank?
man? Like
fucking splat on the ground. Yikes!
It's like one place in your neighborhood that everyone goes to bathe like once a week if you're lucky, and it's also where the dishes are being done. It's like, yeah, my neighbor Frank is in the bathtub, and while he's in the bathtub, I'm doing my dishes in that bathtub.
And everybody's like, "I wish I could go back then. It was a simpler time." Fuck you! I'll take my smartphone.
Yeah, now it's like literally they are not even allowed to put homeless people in a building that doesn't have plumbing. Like they're not allowed to treat homeless people like that. Having no roof is legally better than having a roof without plumbing.
But see, that's also a problem too, because that also blocks homeless people from getting a place to stay.
For sure.
Isn't that fucking wild how that happens too? It's like while trying to help them, the bureaucratic nonsense gets in the way of helping them by making it like, well, has to be this standard of living or it can't exist at all. It's like, how about we'll start here and slowly build on, and you guys can find more funding, opposed to nobody having a place to live.
It's like, definitely an interesting debate too, because like you could be one to say, well, like without those laws, that's the only place anyone would ever put homeless shelters. To be like, just stuff them in the fucking awful places, like whether in the abandoned warehouse. That's like
put them over here, fuck them.
And some might argue like, oh, that abandoned warehouse,
shoving them off to the side.
Yeah. That warehouse where all the windows are blown out is like barely better than the bridge they're living under. So it's like, okay, fine. But it's craziness. And then we have it so good in terms of safety and security and comfort of living. It's like, even if you're poor, man, like you have heat, you can't legally shut someone's heat off in the winter. Yeah, if you don't have to pay your bill. Don't pay it for 6 months. They can't shut it off.
Right. That's it. I'm way behind on my electricity right now because I had a major issue where it was just hemorrhaging heat, and eventually, EverSource and Community Action helped get things squared away, and the house is now insulated, and I'm not hemorrhaging heat like crazy. But it sucked for a while, and a lot of these programs they can help, but some of them just end up screwing things up. Worse. Sure. Yeah. But so, like we were talking about, having an environment is perfect. Like, but you have places like old shopping malls, they're going to shit. Like Yang was saying back when he was running, old shopping malls just going to waste. Let's make those affordable homeless housing. They already exist. They're already there. They're already structures.
And there's enough empty housing to house every homeless person 4 times over, I'm sure.
That's it. And
that's housing, not even like open mall space. That's like already plumbing, electrical, like up to
ready
code
to go
housing. That's just empty houses, let alone I got 40,000 square feet of like insulated warehouse that's just not being leased right now.
Can you imagine?
So Rite Aid down the street that has 14,000 square feet. It's been empty for 2 years.
Yeah.
Put them in there.
Space isn't an issue. It's not an issue of space. And I think that's exactly right. There's so much area, there's so much place for scenarios to be made, but two things get in the way. I mean, I think a lot of times it's usually just the government that gets in the way. A lot of times, like, you could have if you have a government program that helps something like that, but then you can have the same scenario where a private program steps in and they try to do something, but then the government says, well, you can't do this unless you're
Right.
doing this. And then it
Right.
becomes like, well, where can we find a middle ground? Because both are trying to help. Government's
Right.
trying to help, and private sector's trying to help. Oddly enough, they can both have a common ground, but they both end up fighting each other, and
Yep.
it's weird because I think that as we go along, it's we're at the point now where we're gonna start being able to print food and shit soon. No, I'm just hopefully, I mean,
Yeah, I hope too. I don't want need to go back in the market basket after that.
yeah, that's right. Fuck that shit. I'm just like, yeah, Instacart has a printer that goes on your table. No
Yeah,
shit. Really, Instacart. Fucking, they weren't kidding.
it is amazing. Hidden technology has changed everything.
Well, I think that now, people, especially with like, I mean, this is the same thing with appliances. Appliances now, you can just go into a Home Depot, look at a screen. There's nobody in the appliance department. Tell them what your sizes are. If you need somebody, they'll come from a different department to help, but they don't. There's nobody there to help.
Right.
Lowe's is a little bit better about that, and they still have a couple of people in the appliance department, but they may or may not have been working there for a while. And they're working in paint last week, like they're shifting people around.
Yeah.
It's a fucking shit show. So then you have basically computers, people working with these, the same thing. They go online, do the same thing. AI is decimating a ton of industries,
Oh
and
yeah.
as
Yeah.
time goes on, like it's just going to get worse and worse now with the pandemic, the whole shabazz. But what I find to be kind of interesting is how now it's being utilized because of the pandemic. Like it's a benefit in a lot of ways. Like
Right.
the idea of having Amazon deliver your package not by a person but by a robot, it becomes increasingly more desirable. All these different scenarios become increasingly more you know realistic.
Yeah.
Robotic butter trucks, all that kind of stuff. And you
Yeah.
know I don't know. Hopefully we can prioritize things a little bit better in this country to shift towards helping people that by money, actual money. $1,000 a month, I think, would help a lot of people, especially in circumstances like this in Dallas. People are
Yeah.
freezing to death. They can't get into a hotel. Why? Why can't they just live in the hotel? Why can't you guys just like, there's a million scenarios where they have generators and whatnot. They could be doing different things. They're not. There's people that are going to die because of it, and all because of inaction, slow movement
Yeah.
in these southern states. I
Well,
can't.
I
I can't
hope
believe
it's
that shit.
that thing. I hope that's a wake up call. It's like these are problems that I'm sure people I don't know, but I would assume people have been talking about down there. And inaction has been caused by like the lack of like need, this kind of thing. It's like you don't build a levee till it floods, and that's an
That's true.
unfortunate, painful lesson. Their houses, I mean, nothing down there is built for this kind of thing.
That's
Like
that's exactly right. But
they're
like
not
how?
insulated right. They're not like they don't have generators. They don't have plow trucks. They don't have salt. They don't have systems for any of this stuff. And none of the buildings people live in are made
This
to
is this is
retain
the
heat. They're actually made the opposite.
it's terrible. It's terrible. Like in Florida, it's the same scenario. I was down in Florida for like 3 or 4 months. You're right. There's just no infrastructure for people to deal with the snow or any of that stuff. But the worst thing is like federal emergency management, like how they're going to handle it in response to this. They should have already been moving on it. Nobody's, moved anything, and people will die ultimately because of it.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's not much that they can do. Like in Katrina, I mean, there's a certain amount of damage that's going to happen, but
Right.
it's sad. It's scary because there's a lot of people I think down there that the same people who vote against people trying to get climate change going or whatever. I mean, I'm not arguing strong anything one way or another, but I do think that it's ironic people saying that climate change doesn't exist. A lot of them are in the South right now dealing with a major fucking climate shift.
Don't I know it?
Like, fuck, this is not normal. You know what I mean? This stuff shouldn't be happening. And it's a pretty big wake up sign that, they people need to change their direction, their approach. Because aliens, that's the only way out of this, in my opinion. Fucking aliens.
Aliens? Hell yeah.
There's a watching the news lately about aliens. I always ask everybody about aliens before
I
we let them
haven't
go.
I haven't seen anything specifically lately about aliens.
It's been a while since we've been
Oh,
on the air.
the only thing I did recently read that the Area 51 has to disclose all of their information to Congress.
Really?
That it was part of a recent bill that got passed as part of an information share.
Wow. So that was part. So I knew that. I knew that under the new COVID bill that there was going to be an information share regarding the UAP issues that they've been having, the unidentified aerial phenomenon. That's what they're calling now, because Marco Rubio and those guys, they want a report. Congress wants a report because they've been flying over military nuclear websites.
Starts to fuck with the military, and they're like, no, I need to know.
nuclear warheads, and they're just turning them off.
Really?
They're just shutting them off.
Wow.
That's the rumor going around, but there's also a lot of reinforcement on, Joe Rogan's a big proponent of this, as always. That's where a lot of this stuff gets leaked initially. He keeps on having people like Bob Lazar and stuff on there. It's the rock on the boat for real. And now, like, man, when you hear stuff like that, did you hear the one about the Galactic Federation thing?
No.
Oh, dude. Type in, you're right in front of a computer, yeah? Can you?
Yep.
I am HAIMASHED, Chaim Ashed, and then type in aliens, and there's this whole like NBC News thing where about Trump knowing about aliens, the existence of aliens, and that they've been talking to us for.
Former Israeli space security chief says extraterrestrials do exist. That's Galactic Federation.
Yeah, check out that video. This is interesting.
Okay.
Oh boy, wow. Very interesting.
I'll check that out after this, man.
Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, it'll flag us if we try to play it on there now, because it's copyrighted, I imagine. But yeah,
it's like,
it's weird.
That's like, the rest of my night.
Yeah, that's it. They'll shut us right at the end. I don't know, man. Like, the guy has been around for a long time, and he was the head of Israeli space defense for like 35 years. He's like 80 now, and he has nothing to hide. Is basically what it comes down to. And he's saying that Trump knew about it, and oddly enough, that time frame matches up right around the time where he announced Space Force, which makes a whole lot of sense.
What if aliens definitely do exist, which I think that they must, just knowing the side of the scope. What if they do exist, but in a different context than anyone had thought about before?
Yeah.
Like, do you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
So what if it was like this White Walker thing, but in the end the children created them, right? So like, what if it was that? Like, aliens do exist, but they're not from another planet. They're from this one. And they're like been pushed away. They were created by some crazy experiments or something that made these crazy intellectual or mutated beings in this, because most aliens are like, in lore at least, they're like human-like,
yeah, for sure.
And a lot of cases can be said that most lore comes from some sort of truth, whether it be the Loch Ness monster or werewolves or vampires. Like, there's something there, and that I'm sure. Thing. Why are they humanoid? Why they're always in? Maybe it's just pop culture, being pop culture, and the actual aliens are not, or maybe that's because that's where they came from.
The nail on the head. I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Apocalyptic warfare destroys the planet, and 1,000 years later, that's what we look like, and we've created this civilization, and we go back in time. Maybe these aliens are time travelers.
I've said that. I was just going to say, we've said this multiple times on the air, that what's the likelihood that they are actually just us from the future, and the reason why they don't interact with us is because they can't, because of time paradoxes.
Right. Oh my God.
That's the only thing I can think of that would be comparable. But I thought a lot of times, I'm like, aliens, it's likely that they exist. I mean, it's highly unlikely that alien life doesn't exist. But what I'm not sure of is whether they were here visiting us now.
Right.
I mean, especially with the Commander Fravor interview and those videos, they've had one, dude. There's a whole bunch of stuff. You really dig in, it's wild. There's one out there where this guy took a snapshot from inside an F-18 Hornet of a UFO with like
I
this
saw that
crazy
one.
cube around it.
Yeah.
Whoa, 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 whoa. That gets even crazier when you start digging in. They have another one where you see an entire like ship basically come out of the clouds like this, and they're like people in a. This is on Tucker Carlson too. That's what I found so funny. Fucking Tucker Carlson of all people. I'm like, really? And he's like, aliens, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? Tucker fucking okay. Let's see. Are they white nationalists now, Tucker? Tell me the story. Fucking this guy. But seriously, it's a plane and this giant cloud, and all of a sudden this huge thing comes out like that, and people are on a plane. They're like, "Oh my god, look at that!" Oh. I gotta find it. Every time I say I'm gonna put something in the comments here for every episode. I'm not used to having YouTube be a part of this for a long time. It was just
Sure, right.
in-person interviews and audio. Now, getting adapted, I gotta remember to actually put things in the comments and go back and backlog all the episodes I said I was gonna put something in the comments.
Sure. Now, so I watched a couple of these, and they're the videos are like the full screen videos. Is there a way you can make both screens in the video? Even if it's like my view, you're in the corner or I'm in the corner, right?
Yep.
But as I watch more and more of these style interviews, I like when I can see both people at once, because you can see like there's a lot of unspoken reactions as one is speaking, the other is listening.
That's true. So
I like to see people nodding or laughing. And
does it flash back and forth between the two?
Well, I have mine set up so that I'm just like a picture-in-picture kind of thing.
Okay.
But whichever way, I just know when I'm watching other people's interviews, I like when it's either a split screen or I don't mind when it flips back and forth. But if you keep a little picture, a little box of whoever's not the main speaker at that moment, so you can still look down and be like, oh, you're laughing, you're nodding.
I gotta check that out. I want to see if it does. Because I think right now it just shows the picture of whoever's talking,
right?
And then the next person talking, it shows them, and that's how I had it traditionally. But that's actually a good idea. If there's a way I can set it up so like I'm looking at it right now, I can see you, and then I see me up in the corner there. If I can have it toggle back and forth, which I mean, it's got to be a way you could do it. I'm sure it's some easy thing to do on here.
I get the speaker view because you do want to have a bigger picture of whoever's talking, but I feel like there's something missed on whoever's listening. For
sure, because I do a lot of like I nod my head frequently. That's and then the cannabis there's that too.
Right, sure.
I had to be worried because I was like I found out Robin Firth, who's research assistant there for Stephen King for the Dark Tower series. She's in the UK, and I was like smoking cannabis or whatever, and she's like, I guess she couldn't talk about it so much on her end as much as like I can do whatever on my end because it's being recorded. And I was like, I at first I'm like, oh wait, no, it's fine. I'm like, whew. No, I felt I'm like, this is important, that I respect the guest on the other side, and but she was really nice about it, and I told her, I'm like, I can edit out something if there's a concern. It's not live.
Right. Or just like you're like, oh wow,
yeah. Well, and that's the best thing about these things, right?
Yeah.
I love what they've done with cannabis in the last 5 years, but 10 years specifically. Now that you can make distillate without any flavors, so it smells like burnt plastic almost if you blow it out. It doesn't smell like anything.
Yeah.
The straight distillate, just the pure THC. Oh boy, it tastes bad and it doesn't have a smell, but boy, it works.
I love the meme. I saw a meme. It was just like 10 years ago. You guys want to duck behind this Wendy's and smoke weed out of a like a Coca-Cola can, and now it's like, I think I'll hit this vape in this Target.
Fuck it, I'll rip it in a Target. Yeah, dude,
fucking I'll rip it in the Target. Just like,
it's so accurate, dude. You go to a movie theater and you're just like, if I take a light enough hit with the temperature down enough, nobody will even notice. And sure enough, they don't.
And even if you hit it hard, dude, most people don't like care.
Nobody gives a fuck.
Especially if you're like, I mean, I don't know if movie theaters are going to exist after this anymore, but
do you know right now the use of, because of the legalization of cannabis and the changes in just the last 5-10 years, like the usage of cannabis has grown exponentially. Like so many people use cannabis right now in some
yeah,
way, shape, or form.
even if
And
it's just like occasionally, you know,
even if just CBD too for aches
yeah,
and pains right now. Some people don't even come close to anything other than just the CBD gummies, but they're utilizing it daily for major pain, you know.
sure. I never understood it. It was always the dumbest thing to me. The you know, the aspect of making it illegal. It's like, I know more people who have
Same.
done pot. Like if it's like this hilarious secret, it's like, haha, we all know our parents have probably done pot, right? And they
Right.
grew up with that. And you're like, why is it illegal then? They turned out fine. Like,
That's it. I mean,
I I understand the argument about moderation. That goes for pot, alcohol, food, whatever, man. Like,
it just had to have something to replace alcohol when they had the prohibition thing. It's silly, but like the big thing was how cannabis impacted the paper industry and the logging industry. They was taking a big dive because of hemp, cannabis, paper, and rope. And then because of it, they started blaming it on black people and Mexicans, and saying
yeah,
that only jazz musicians and Mexicans, dirty Mexicans, using pot, and
yeah, weed and
it's
heroin,
bullshit.
right?
Bullshit.
Two
Yeah,
things that are
that's
clearly should be together.
fucking just propaganda and bullshit from a long time ago. And it's so funny that the roots of cannabis being illegal is rooted in racism. Its
Yeah,
primary function
absolutely.
was to eliminate a political contender uh, during an election race down in like Louisiana or some shit. And
Yep.
since then, like that's it has it respectfully took the place of alcohol being the deadly. Um, Which is, think about it, if that never happened, what if alcohol stayed prohibition and cannabis became the big money generator? What would have happened in this, you know,
I don't know, man. Like I'm not. I love weed, as you know.
alternate reality fiction right there?
I'm not one to say that weed has no negative effects, but I think a major survey of state troopers said that if you had to pick a vice, they would have their constituents pick weed because it's
Yep.
overwhelmingly less bad than alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's weird that every single intoxicant that you could take gets you high, and that's the word for it. But except for alcohol, it gets you drunk. There's a different word for it because we don't want to associate it with the other intoxicants, the other things that alter your mind. You know, weed gets you high, heroin gets you high, meth gets you high, LSD gets you high, pills get you high. But beer gets you drunk. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we have to put a different word for it because we can't have them lumped together.
A whole other category for its shittiness.
And it's hilarious to think that like alcohol was prohibited, you know. It's, well, okay, so yeah, what did and
What was
you
the
know,
reason behind it too? Why did they make it illegal back then?
That's a good question. I feel like I should actually know this,
Yeah,
especially
me
since we're
too.
like,
How
I know
long was it for? Like 12
I
years?
know about their prohibition. Why was alcohol prohibited? The noble experiment was undertaken to reduce crime and corruption, solve social problems, reduce a tax burden created by prisons and poorhouses, and improve health and hygiene. That's the official reason. That's
Yeah. How'd that work out?
I
How
mean,
long was it for? 12 years?
13 years, 1920 to 33. And I can't think of anything bad that happened between those years.
Right. That's interesting. It's very interesting. I uh I think that it makes sense that you can't really make any drugs illegal. I think that what somebody does with their own body is going to be what they do with their own body. You know, you can't
Yeah.
step in and say, "Hey, you can't do this." Just let people do whatever they're going to do, and unfortunately, there's a fallout from that. But I think most of the time, people, as long as they have socially rich lives, are going to opt towards socially rich lives instead of being by themselves and depressed and you know,
I think that if you're going to let
environments.
cigarettes be legal, then you have no logical merit to make anything else illegal. And of course, there's a public safety concern. Like, okay, you can't drive fucking
All
stoned. You
cigarettes
can't
do is
drive
kill you.
drunk. Yeah, like literally.
The only point, death.
So, you know, when you do in your own privacy isn't really a public safety concern. What you do while you're driving or in public may be a different conversation, but like I think that there's no logical barrier to if it's not all illegal, then it should all be legal.
I agree.
And I feel like if you try to make any one of them illegal, then your logic is out the window, and there should just either you think they're all illegal because you're regulating our lives and it's not healthy and it's not good, or it's all legal and it's a personal problem and that's it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that you can't really like have it go the other direction and try to bridge the middle ground there. I think you're entirely right. You kind of have to respect people's space to do what they want with their body,
Mm-hmm.
uh, or don't. It's pretty simple. Like
Right.
you're either going to control all those things and manipulate all those things, and manipulate people's lives, or you're just going to stay out of it and leave them to do what they want with their own bodies. Like
That's it.
you have to give people their space to kind of do their thing, because they're going to do what they want anyway. And if you try to stop it, they're just going to find ways around it to do it legally anyway. And
Yep.
they're just costing taxpayers themselves more money. I think that like cannabis is a good example of that. Cannabis is
Yeah.
so harmless, and people could just literally just give it up. Like, it's not that big of a deal to hang on to it. Like, do we really need? Is cannabis so important that we're gonna hang on to it? Like, people are like, yeah, fuck that. It's our bodies, it's our choice. We're gonna do whatever the fuck we want with it. You fuck right off, telling us to do what we want. Like, people have continued growing this plant regardless. They continued using alcohol regardless. Continue using heroin regardless. Every drug is being used regardless of the fact that it is illegal. So,
And what you do when prohibition creates a dilemma, right? Like, yeah, I like to use prostitution in this example because prostitution is not inherently immoral. And there are many countries where it is legal, right?
Yeah.
But there's a legal versus morality issue. Like, is it moral or is it illegal? These are not the same conversation. So
Sure.
Pimping, that is morally wrong, but prostitution's
Right.
not. Like, I can sell my body and I can do that, and a girl should be able to do that, but owning another girl is bad, and obviously sex trafficking is bad, and these are
Yes.
morality issues, and it really just, those two things go hand in hand for me. It's like
I
it's
agree.
legality is not morality. They're two different questions, and it drives everything into the shadows. So if you are a prostitute operating in where it's illegal, what it means is if someone is pimping you, you can't go to the police. If you are being sex trafficked, if you are being abused, you have no way to
No recourse. No,
operate safely. It forces you to operate in areas and within groups of people that are seedier groups with no recourse when things go awry. And what happens if you make, like Costa Rica, prostitution is legal. Pimping is very illegal and heavily prosecuted. So if you're a prostitute in Costa Rica and you have someone who abuses you or takes advantage of you or tries to pimp you or traffic you, go to the police and they'll take care of it. But if it's illegal, you have no recourse. And that's the same thing in the case of heroin. If you're addicted to heroin and something happens when you're buying it or using it, it just forces you to operate in shitty places, in back alleys with seedier groups. Whereas in some other fancy world, if I wanted to use heroin, I could do that in an affluent place with people that hopefully don't agree with that thing, but I don't have to go do it in some back alley. I don't have to be forced into the shadows. So it's like prohibition causes other issues.
Makes everything worse. It really does. Yeah. I think that the fact that it exacerbates all those the problems with the substance itself, people are just using it in worse scenarios. Like you said, like if they're gonna use needles, they're probably gonna use needles regardless. Like what happens if they start using bad needles because they're not able to get clean ones because society's like trying to control it. That doesn't help anybody. Makes things worse. Uh,
There's a big difference between using and selling. And it's like, so from a morality standpoint, it's like, all right, I want to use heroin. Leave me the fuck alone. I want to use heroin.
right.
Okay, that's your body, man. Do you want in the comfort of your home. Now, I'm like, I want to sell heroin. Okay, this is
That's a
now a
different
public
story.
safety issue.
Yes.
We can all agree that heroin is bad, but I'm not going to stop you from doing it because
Right.
whatever. But I
What you do
can,
with your body is your choice, but you
right.
can't start
I
selling.
can't regulate what you do personally, but I
Yes.
can regulate what is legal to sell, what the market does. You know,
Absolutely.
like the regulations on the advertising for alcohol and cigarettes. Like they
Hmm.
can't advertise it, market it to kids, and every time it gets suspiciously close, like back before Obama took office, there were like all
Yeah.
these flavored cigarettes
Hmm.
that were made illegal.
Shut that shit down quick as
Shut it
shit.
down. And yeah, sure, there's plenty of conversation to be had about personal liberty and what the government should or shouldn't be able to do and regulate. But at the end of the day, like public safety, in my opinion, is something the government is there to regulate. Not that saying
Yep.
that they do a great job of it.
Right.
Not saying I agree with the way it's being done, but you know, there's certain things that like you shouldn't be able to sell heroin, but
Right.
I shouldn't go to jail if I do it.
Right. Right.
And it really is not
That
going to entice me to come to you whenever I do have a problem.
right. Well, and I think that why do we have a scenario in which somebody is hopelessly addicted to a drug? Now, what's the scenario? We're going to, you know, um, berate them about it and treat them like shit and make them feel awful about it, arrest them about it when they go to try to get help. We're going to make it acceptable and understanding and inviting for them to come in and get help that they need and make the positive changes in their life that is going to help them contribute to their families again, to their
Yeah.
lives, to society, so on and so forth. And I think that is how we look at it. People treat addicts like, like they're just less than humans. And uh, those people are all people. Those
Mm-hmm.
addicts are all just people that were in the same position before. And I think that, empathy becomes a big part of it right now. There's just a lack of it for a lot of people when it comes to like drug addicts and stuff. And it's sad because so many people suffering. And, I think that what people do with their body at the end of the day is their choice. And I think that some people are just suffering and it's awful. And that
Yeah.
even when it comes down to things like self-assisted suicide, all that stuff, it's a tough scenario. But at the end of the day, your body is your own personal choice. Now, when you start to impact other people directly or indirectly, I think that's where it becomes kind of significantly more of a gray area. But the goal, I think, should be is try to make it a better place for everybody, living together happily. Kumbaya. But no, seriously, I think that if we all try to work and be in that understanding that, you can have an Osco drug and they sell heroin and cocaine right down the street. Go
Yeah.
right down, no problem. Pick up your bag of heroin, go on home, have a fun time, do whatever you want. Your psilocybin, all of it, right there, right at the Brooks Pharmacy. All these places that don't exist anymore, probably. Osco Drug, Brooks Pharmacy. But seriously, you go down, you get your old school druggist or whatever. That scenario should have never changed. It should have been like that, and that's the way it should go back to. If you've got ghosts in your blood, cocaine is the drug.
Yeah.
You got ghosts in your blood.
Right.
Cocaine is right for you.
Yeah. It's the bottle of like, oh, you have a fever. Well, why don't you do this? Well, what is this? Oh, it's absinthe, cocaine, methamphetamine in a bottle. Wow.
Have fun.
Modern medicine. That was cutting edge at the time. It's funny. And I hope
A
we have that.
wild ride.
I'm very curious to like see the change that happens in my lifetime and be able to have the same kind of outlook on it that we do now. When you look at these old timey advertisements,
Yeah.
like we're learning a lot of lessons. I'll give credit where it's due. Like the rhetoric for a lot of cultural things is changing. People are realizing that companies in the last 100 or so years have learned that marketing is a tool and changed cultural things due to marketing. Like
For sure.
Gillette ran campaigns to make women think they needed to shave, and that was a product because of slumping sales due to the war. All the men went out to war. They weren't selling razors anymore. They're like, cool, put out marketing that says women need to shave. Deodorant, that's like a new thing in the last 100 years. That wasn't a thing. That was a marketing thing. Engagement rings, De Beers ran those campaigns and started, like, in 1915, people weren't buying friggin' diamonds to get
I have
married.
no idea about any of this. This is amazing.
It's Old Spice, like, it made the game. They like, are you smelly? Women should wear deodorant. Like, that was not a thing until the
Fucking
war.
wild.
It's absolutely crazy. There's a lot of marketing that's like built a lot of rhetoric and really influenced the things that happen. Like this whole like 3-month salary engagement ring thing is a total farce. Like, dude, like back in the day, man, you want to get married, you just get married. You find your pastor, you go out in a field with a few of your friends and family, you get married. It's like, that's it. They didn't have access to these things.
That's awesome. Like my wife and I, we were. She was awesome about it. She got angry because I spent like $300 on a ring. She flipped out on me. She's like, "We don't have money for that," because she was pregnant and we were like trying to plan things out and everything was so. We ended up going back and picked it out together because that's how she was. I mean, she was super like focused on, we were trying to save money, being realistic, our wedding and whatnot. We ended up getting like $20 wedding rings. I went saw the sweet tungsten ring. I ended up getting her the more expensive ring without her knowing, but and then I tricked her into it after, and she went with it. But I saw a $75 tungsten ring at the jeweler when we were looking there, and she's like, "No, I saw the same thing online. It's less expensive." Blah, blah, blah. The exact same company, exact same thing, was online for like $17, like $2 or $3 shipped, so it was like $20 after everything for the same ring that was $75 at the jeweler. And well, I'm not going to drop the name, but somewhere near Manchester. And I couldn't believe that that markup there just between the online retailer, that the Amazon retailer or whatever, versus those guys. Of course, they're local, family owned. I feel bad, I had money for that.
Whatever,
and
man.
It was amazing. $15, $17. But we were all very much about the moment for us. We had nobody at the wedding. It was just me and her. And then we, kind of celebrated after with a few people talking about it, but it was just me and her and the justice of the peace. And then we went and did our own thing after. It was like, like it should be about that. It shouldn't be about these marketing campaigns that have engineered us to think a certain way.
Yeah.
Oh my God. What is it? Thanksgiving Day, Valentine's Day, Valentine's Day. Holy crap! What a racket that is, though, for people. Like, I can't imagine. Like,
it's an institution now, and it's become this thing. It's like 80 to 100 years of thinking that now. Like,
if you don't do it, you're in the doghouse, kind of.
Yeah, thing. And now most girls are like, it's not a conversation; it's an expectation, and not faulting, most modern women. It's just the point that there's many things on the male side that are exactly the same. And I think medicine is a big example of how, like, the rhetoric changes a lot, and it's like, I can't wait to be 50 years from now. I'll be looking back and be like, I can't fucking believe they're gonna be like, Grandpa, shut the fuck up. What are you talking about? What do you mean
Uphill,
you can't believe?
Both ways in the snow? Yeah.
I used to take my telephone and plug it into the computer to get to the internet. Like, Grandpa, you're high again. What does that to do with it?
Seriously, like, what are we even talking about anymore? Go back to sleep. You're crazy.
I had a printer that poked holes in the paper, and they're like, "What's paper?"
Yes, what's paper? Oh man, what the hell is paper?
So this crazy change, technology is all wrapped up into it. The ability to market is brought on by technology. The radio first, and then now television, and the marketing industry is a dwarfing industry at this point. Like,
it is, and it's going to continue to get out of hand now that they have all of our personalized data.
Yeah, but I'm happy to see what I was saying is more the rhetoric. Yeah. I've seen, like, people are realizing this kind of thing is going on, and people are less like brainwashed and more aware, and like as much information, too much information that's available today. It's a blessing and a curse, but You know, I've seen a lot more positive things being said about addiction, and like people are having real conversations. And I feel like some of the things are getting rolled back. Like, oh, we kind of messed up here. We went too far with prohibition or morality or medicine or diamond rings. Like some people are getting a little more woke, as you say.
Well,
And
that's it. Yeah, the word's getting around. Veganism is changed. You know, the animal industry, the agro industry, like you said, things like the diamonds, discussion about diamonds and blood diamonds. That's impacted those
yeah,
industries. Like you just keep on going, and the list goes on when it comes to the internet has utterly changed the landscape in which we buy things, we talk, we communicate. This right here would have been just an FCC violation times a million, you know, if they could control it still, but they can't, you know. And I think that that is it's a wonderful thing in a lot of ways. It's also, it can be a delicate balance, of course, but now uh, you know, I think we're going to continue to go in this direction as long as we can really kind of focus attention to the fact that, you know, people getting too much control of things can be dangerous. So we really need
sure.
to just let off the wheel. It's going to be scary, I think, with the free speech thing. People are scared of that and the free everything. But really, we just need to let racist people out themselves. Let all of this shit just go, you know, because
Oh yeah,
we can't control what other people are doing and all that stuff. And as long as people are kind of being idiots on their own, you know, natural selection and all that, even digitally.
yeah,
You know, I really appreciate your time and talking about all this stuff. This has been great.
sure, man.
And I really can't say enough for episodes like this where it just kind of goes seamlessly. We got to talk about a lot of cool stuff. Even
Yeah.
aliens, ladies and gentlemen, folks. Aliens always comes up, manages to come up every episode.
gotta
So
gotta bring it up.
yeah, absolutely. It somehow just creeps its way into it. But alternate dimensions and the whole shebang, even time traveling human beings.
Hey, I mean, I'll talk for a while on like time traveling and the conundrum.
We could.
I love the time travel conundrum. Like one of
Oh
the
man,
at a
messes you.
very probably too early age, I watched like the Terminator and was like introduced to that. And my whole life, I've been like time travel conundrum. And
Yes.
I've been recently like getting my girlfriend to watch some of these old Terminator movies, and she's like, "But wait, if John Connor sent Kyle Reese back in time to save his mother, but then Kyle Reese ended up being John Connor's father. So when he met him, it was in the future, but his father was younger than him. He was sent back in time and impregnated his mother. Did he know that if he didn't do that, would it have happened? Or did like I was
It's
like, babe,
awesome.
you're
It's just like
getting
you
it.
just keep going, keep watching.
You get it.
It's gonna get mind blowing.
It was like it almost institutes the idea of fate because
Yeah.
it's like if you didn't do that, none of this would be.
Right.
So you did it. So you're
It's
gonna do it.
intention. Yeah, yeah.
Whether you know you're gonna do it or you don't know you're gonna do it, doesn't matter. You're
It's
gonna
gonna
do it.
happen. Did
Or
you
you'll
watch the newest Terminator? Oh,
no, I'm actually working my way
you
to
lost
it.
me there for a second. My power
Oh,
went out. Hold on one second.
EOS webcam utility beta.
Yeah, it's my the battery went off there for a second. So I have to pop one out. Usually these last a little while. Oh, I've got the shorter battery in right now.
I see. No,
So
but the short answer, no. I'm actually working my way up to it, to rewatching all of them. But I haven't seen the newest one. I actually got a pretty good rating, so I'm curious to see
I
it.
was pretty impressed for the most part. I like it wasn't the same as the Judgment Day, I think
Yeah,
is what
sure.
people are measuring it to, because that
The
was the
first
one
two are
that
like the golden gooses, you know,
yeah.
Judgment Day being like the probably the most successful one. But
Well, because of James Cameron, and he directed this one again, so they're like,
oh, he
you know,
did. I actually didn't know that.
yeah, I really I saw the connection to it and I liked it. I was okay with it. I thought it got a lot of heat, but
I mean, after rewatching them, you know, like the third one kind of fell off the rails, but it
yeah,
had the vibe. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad.
I
The
liked
fourth
it.
one had like a very different thing going on, but had like a lot of
That's the one with Christian Bale in it, right?
yeah, like
I like that because I like Christian Bale. That was
I
my
like
thing.
Christian
Like,
Bale. I also like dark movies, apocalyptic
yeah.
movies. So like that was kind of up my alley. But rewatching it, I was like, the plot here is a little tough. Fine, whatever, cool.
Yeah.
And then that's where I stopped. So I actually have two to watch after this. There's
It's crazy. If you watch that entire timeline thing and you go and like watch some of the stuff online, it it's pretty mind blowing. Some of the integrated timelines, it all works. The whole thing, even up into the newest one, I'm just like, oh, it hurts my head to watch the whole diagram, and
I'm like
that's like,
the one like dude that watched the show. Like, did you ever see the show, the
yeah,
Sarah
the
Connor
Sarah Connor
Chronicles?
Chronicles, yeah.
It wasn't. I'm not going to say it was great. It wasn't.
Amelia
But
Clark in it. Was
uh,
she in it? Or
no,
was no?
no, it's the girl that plays Cersei in Game of Thrones.
That's who it
What's her
was.
name? Yeah,
Yes.
she plays Sarah Connor. And of course, when you get to a TV show, there's so much plot that happens. There's bound to be some dicey, like, wait a second,
That
moments.
does,
But
yeah, yeah, exactly. It doesn't work into the canon or the
uh,
continuity of the story or
it's
something.
better as a feature length. When you got to put 40 hours of the stuff out, you're like, you're getting a little loose here. As any show happens, like.
I think it's inevitable that production is going to allow for a lot of stuff like that's going to happen. Like in Shield, the Agents of Shield show, I guess there's a
Yeah.
lot of that. If you're like a Marvel enthusiast, a lot of people are like, yeah, they took some, I guess, liberalities. Well, I don't know what the word would be that they'd be using, but they really just did whatever they wanted in that show.
Sure.
I mean, I think that where are we going? I totally went on a tangent there.
I was talking about Terminator time.
Oh,
issues.
time loops. Seriously,
Yeah.
though, the paradox thing is a huge mind blow. And I was going to bring up real quick before we go, Tenet. Have you seen Tenet?
I haven't seen it yet. No, I plan to watch it soon. I'm a big Christopher Nolan fan.
Amazing.
It's definitely like it seems by the ads and some reviews like most of his other films like shoved into one film. Like, there's like Interstellar vibes, and there's like just all of the things going on.
I couldn't even like begin to describe how much of a complete mind fuck that movie is. And
my friend watched it. He came back and said, so I saw Tenet, but I still don't know what it's about. I gotta see it. All right, we're Christopher Nolan.
You can decipher. You can break it down if you get into it real, but it's tough because there's a lot of really in-depth stuff there that some people just aren't even gonna have interest in knowing about, like how entropy works and like how they're like trying to ride the waves of entropy backwards in time to use it as best method or mechanism for time travel. And it gets confusing to say the least. My head hurts just after like 5 minutes of trying to figure out which way they're going. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. And then I watched like kind of a breakdown and I'm like, okay, a lot of that makes sense. But where that doesn't matter so much is where the character storyline comes in. Like once you start to really get into it, it makes sense, and it's good. I think it's a good movie. I think the relationship between a couple of the characters is just enough that they even with the complex dialogue, complex storyline, complex everything in that movie, their connection in that movie, Robert Pattinson and well, I forget the guy's name there. The main antagonist. I forget.
In Tenet?
In Tenet, yeah. Guy is an amazing actor.
John David Washington?
That may be him.
He's literally listed as the protagonist.
Yeah, he's the protagonist. That's
his name.
That's it. That's why I said his name. That because they didn't have a name for him in the movie because you don't never know who he is. It's weird, but he. Yeah, I'm not gonna even go close to it.
I'll definitely watch it
because people get upset if you ruin anything, and I don't know how you could with that movie because it's so fucking confusing.
Yeah, right.
It's like spoiler alert. How?
Yeah.
Listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on and listening to me ramble a little bit and having a great back and forth dialogue and running along on a tangent with me.
Sure, man. It's my pleasure.
Thanks
for having me.
It's a great time talking to somebody who really knows their trade too. So I really value your input, and I'd be interested in sending you some material and stuff. So I'll talk to you more after.
Yeah.
But everybody out there, listeners, if you get a chance and you're um, interested in recording, really dig in and find out more about Revelry Studios out of Manchester, right?
Yeah. Check out the site, revelrystudios.com. We've got all sorts of really cool examples of the audio and the video work that we do. It's really high quality, and we're really proud of it. So
you should be. It's really amazing. I didn't get to say that enough earlier. I really am impressed by some of the work that has come out of what you guys are doing over there. It's really amazing.
Thanks, man.
So yeah, again, thank you for coming on the show, and folks out there, thank you for listening. As always, we appreciate your time and attention to the random things in the world, and be nice to each other out there.
Yeah, definitely.
As always, Abstract here, Abstract there.
Abstract Transmissions.